Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. We're here for this week's One Last Thing with Slava Cooperstein. Slava, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Ken. How about yourself?
Always fun to do this show with you. We got something that's kind of cool. We're looking at trends this week of positive and negative things on the Ravens. And by the way, we had a hard time coming up with some negative trends on a 7-2 football team that is absolutely dominating the National Football League. But maybe they're trends, maybe they're risks, we can call them. But we have four total negative trends between this 2-2, and we have 4 positive trends. We probably could have come up with many more if we really had been digging deeper on that. And we're going to kind of go through those and talk a little bit about each, and some reasons for concern, some reasons why we're pretty darn happy about this Ravens team right now. So, Slava, you want to start us off? And I think we've agreed we're going to do the bad news before the good news this time.
Yeah. I mean, and Ken, I think you're absolutely right. On a team that's 7-2, you're sort of nitpicking some of the things that you think could be better, and although these things are legitimate concerns, you really do have to feel really positive about the direction of this team. Mm-hmm. That being said, I'll start with the first negative trend, which has continued throughout the season, and that's the usage of Zay Flowers. Now, of course, I'm not talking about the fact that he's been featured largely in a number one receiver role. I think his, talent and ability and production, quite frankly, has merited that, and he's, I think, exceeded some of the expectations you might have for a rookie receiver. But the way that they use him, I mean, we harp on this, I feel like, almost every week, but it hasn't really changed. His average depth of target is just so low, and so many of these plays where they're either throwing, behind the line of scrimmage or just past it, really not using what he could really bring to this team. They're really not maximizing his talents. He could be clearing out a lot of space for Andrews. He could be, he could be drawing some DPI or holdings, and so I think that there's a lot more to be untapped with how they're using Zag currently.
Yeah, it's a topic we've discussed a number of times. I think there's actually an opportunity with the emergence of Keaton Mitchell, and he's obviously going to get a lot more playing time now, that they will have other options in terms of some of the shorter gadget plays. They have not made use of Duvernay. In fact, they've not got him on the field much at all these last few weeks. He's been kind of a forgotten man, but he did have 2 catches this last week for 10 yards. Possible he could be involved more in the offense. Of course, Justice Hill is a regular in the backfield. He had the most carries by far. The most snaps by far. He also had the most carries this last week. So I think his use will continue. But it should be a case where the Ravens have at least 1 and often 2 speed players on the field at one time, and they're certainly capable of manufacturing 3. And I think that's going to lead to more downfield usage of Zay and more effective taking of defensive attention than he's got so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the only thing I'll add to that is Keaton Mitchell's first play a couple weeks ago before he had that minor injury was a gadget play. So, I mean, that does sort of, give you hope that he'll be a little bit more featured in that role than Zay.
Yeah, his first 2 snaps were both pony snaps, where he's in as a second back, and they're the only 2 that the Ravens have run this year. So, very exciting to see that. Okay, I'll take another negative trend. I think a big one is that the fumbles continue, and it's been something that the Ravens could not really get over in 2018 in Lamar's first year. They just had mesh point problem after mesh point problem. Fair number of problems with Lamar losing the football in the pocket as well. I'm not as concerned about the strip sack type fumble. I mean, obviously, I think that was unavoidable. It's the ball transfer fumbles that have really got to be reduced. And we have yet to see a problem with Keaton Mitchell in terms of the mesh point, but there haven't been also a lot of times where he's worked from it. It's mostly been just straight handoffs. So hopefully, when as they are doing more of that and trying to still mix Lamar's speed and dangerousness into the game, they will not create more problems for themselves with fumbles as the year goes on.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully this is going to be something that's, coachable. You would think that they would be, they'd be past this at this point, but they do need to figure it out. I find it frustrating when people say, when somebody strip sacks Lamar and somebody's, says like, there's Lamar fumbling again. You can't do anything in that situation. You really can't. That's really more on the O-line. I will say I don't think that I've seen too many fumbles in recent weeks that were kind of just, there were some that were just, completely inexplicable, as opposed to the mesh point ones, which do need to be cut down. But at least, we're like down to like one real category of fumble that seems to be a coaching technique issue.
Yeah, the Beckham fumble downfield. You never want fumbles from your receivers. Extra effort on receiving plays is a significant source of fumbles. The one thing that I really don't want to see from Ravens players anymore is hurdling. I don't think hurdling has ever proven to be a good payoff in terms of fumble risk.
Yeah, although it was fun when for a few weeks when all the tight ends were sort of competing as to who could hurdle the most. It looks cool, but it's not fun when you turn the ball over.
I think you're up, right? Your second negative. Yeah,
my second negative. So this is the one that kind of concerns me the most, and that's the current state of the defensive line rotation. All the players on the D-line are just having an outstanding season, but they are playing a significant number of snaps, and just carrying those 5 defensive linemen, could catch up to the Ravens. There's a couple of it's not just the number of defensive linemen that the Ravens are starting week in and week out. It's also the fact that we haven't seen the outside linebackers kick in too often. We haven't seen, oftentimes, as you've noted in the past, we've had games where the Ravens were outsnapped, and that leads to pretty significant number of snaps for these guys. What you don't want is for the linemen to start hitting a wall late in the season when they're going to be needed the most. I see no reason why the Ravens shouldn't bring in, whether it's Ndamukong Suh or some other player, just to take some snaps. Particularly, if you're looking at a blowout like we had last week, you have a real opportunity to say, it's a very low risk for us to not have our top guys out there. So let's manage their loads a little bit.
Yeah, that's a position where they don't often take those guys off the field. They did a little bit in this last game, but they don't do it too much. A couple things about what you're saying. First of all, completely agree with you. They have averaged 2.18 defensive line snaps per game. Now, their number is actually per play, I should say, per play. So what that means is that the average defensive lineman has to play 43.7% of snaps. That's too high for a lot of linemen. Like Brent Urban at this point in his career is not playing 43% of the snaps ever. There was a time when he played 50% of the snaps, but that's not happening again. Travis Jones probably could play a little more than he is, but he's already about pushing 37%, which is about where I'd like him to be honest. Broderick Washington's at 42%. And then you have the two people who they're depending on tremendously, Michael Pierce 56.7% and Matabike 64.9%, both way too high. And I would agree with you that there's a couple ways to address it. One is with a sixth defensive lineman, and do a little bit more rotation. That really does change your game day mix of players. And you have to figure out, where else can I make a sacrifice? Can I play with 2 tight ends? Can I play with one less defensive back, probably one less corner, and deal with what that does to my special teams? Maybe one less outside linebacker. Maybe Tavius Robinson has to sit for Sue if he were brought on. That'd be kind of a shame. Tavius has been playing pretty well against the run lately. It'd be a shame if that had to happen. On the other hand, keeping this defensive line healthy is one of the real strengths of the team, and it could quickly become one of the weaknesses if this overplaying were to continue. And we've been kind of knocking on wood all year. Ravens have had a lot of injuries, and yet Michael Pierce has not fallen victim to any. And he's also been one of the most important players. We've also seen that Justin Matabike in past years has been a guy who's kind of worn down as the season going on, and he's always been more effective with fewer snaps played. This year he's playing at a much higher level and playing very well, but I wouldn't want to tempt fate on that either. I'd rather have him play less and maintain his freshness as a pass rusher, which has just been phenomenally effective for the Ravens this year. So, I think it is a significant point of concern you bring up.
Yeah, you just never know when a player is going to hit that wall, and when that happens, the production just really drops off. And aside from a significant injury or something like that, that's what would concern me most about this defense, which is performing at just an unbelievable level. So something you want to see carry over into the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you my other trend that is negative. The UFAs the Ravens have are making it very difficult for the team to re-sign them. This is a double-edged sword because a lot of these guys, they aren't going to re-sign anyway. So they may as well have great seasons on the way out, deliver a 2023 that is really special with a deep playoff run, and go out in a blaze of glory and a high comp pick. So I'm not unhappy for these players. I think a lot of these guys are going to end up going, and it's just part of the price of being a good drafting team is you end up having to make heartbreaking decisions about who you have to let go. But just to go through the names here, I think all the following guys are likely to not be Ravens next year, and that starts with Edwards. Slim possibility of being back, but I think he's likely not a Ravens. Zeitler is almost certainly gone. Stone is almost certainly gone. Matabike is almost certainly gone. Queen is almost certainly gone. We can do a little handicapping of maybe what we think about percentages of these guys, and I think that'd be worthwhile. But I do not think that Pierce is going to be around, or that Clowney is going to be around, or that Van Noy is going to be around. I have the name Simpson in here, but that's not right. That's not who I mean. But anyway, no. Of course, I mean John Simpson, the left guard. So he's likely gone as well. Trenton Simpson will be here. That's for sure. But that just scratches the surface because those are the guys who there'll really be a free agent market for. Those guys, I think, each of them has a chance to be signed in the early portion where the comp formula is being calculated. Now, Clowney and Van Noy may not be, but they're having such good seasons. I think it's possible they will. If they stick around, improves the chances the Ravens get them back. But that's a really big list of names to lose at the high end. I haven't even gotten to the backup guys yet.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a significant concern, particularly given the number of the amount of cap space we've used up next season. That being said, I do think that the Ravens value re-signing their own to a really high level. So I think there is a chance that they would try to make a push for one of those guys, and one or more of those guys. But the juice is not worth the squeeze for Patrick Queen, for example, because there's just too many different ways that you can deal with that, right? But when it comes to a player like Michael Pierce, I think the pitch is, look, you were here with us in the beginning, you left to go to Minnesota, and now you're back. You've had that experience, you've gone to different teams in the league, and we think that we can offer you it's sort of a better organization to work for. I'm not saying anything down on the Vikings or anything, but we've seen tons of clips where veterans who have joined the Ravens after playing for other teams for a long time, like Justin Houston, just talking about what a first class organization this is. And at some point in your career, there are those guys that are like, I either want to continue to stay in one spot, or I want to be in a place where I'm going to win. Just in the numbers game, you got to think that there's at least a couple people that might fit that mold, and they've had some luck re-signing some of these veteran outside linebackers or edge players just by virtue of the fact that the market just doesn't seem to be quite as big.
Okay, I'm looking for just a quick handicapping of these players, and we'll go one at a time, and rip through them just really quickly in terms of your feel. We won't have to discuss it at all,
Sure.
but just give me a percentage chance of these guys being re-signed. We'll start with Edwards.
I don't feel bad about Edwards' chances of being re-signed just because the market's not that high. So I'd put it at 35%.
Okay, I say go say 25. Zeitler.
Well, he is playing better now. I think that really depends on Zeitler. But I would put it at 20.
Okay, same 20. Stone.
I think it depends on what the market looks like. I put it at also 20.
Okay, I go to 10 on Stone. I just don't see that happening with him having 2 safeties. I might have gone to 5. Matabike.
Boy, he's going to be expensive. I put that at 10%.
Okay, I'm going to say 15, and that's actually a little higher than I was before, but I think there's a chance he gets tagged. So that could be the way they keep him. How about Queen?
Queen, I think, is the lowest of all, is 5%.
Okay, I think that's not unreasonable. I put 10, but I think you're on the money there. John Simpson.
Simpson feels like he's a guy that they could kind of offer early if they feel comfortable enough with his play. He has stacked together a number of good weeks. Put it at 30.
Okay, I have it at 40%. I just don't think there's a big market for him. They have a need. So if obviously some of it has to do with how well he plays the rest of the way.
Right.
So if he blows it out of the building, he's going to be gone. If his play kind of continues to sputter along, the penalties return, then I think he's got a pretty good chance to be re-signed here, even though it's kind of a weird situation where the player has to play poorly to re-sign him. Michael Pierce, and okay, let me come up with a number on Pierce. Yeah.
Michael Pierce, I'm going to put at 45%.
Okay, I have him at 50. I think he's a guy who fits the Ravens so well that I think he's a good guy. But anyway, that's a good one. Clowney? Okay, let me get my Clowney number down so I'm not cheating off your number here.
Yeah, Clowney, okay. I'll put at 50.
Okay, 35 for me. I think there will be a market for him there. Van Noy?
I'd also put him at 50.
Okay, 35 for me again. I think the Ravens don't really have that one outside linebacker guy they like on a year-by-year basis. They did have McPhee for a few years, but they move around. They switch around a fair amount. So that's it in terms of those guys. But let's talk about the secondary group. I mean, J.K. Dobbins is going to be gone. Now, whatever you think about Keaton Mitchell, and we're going to have some nice things to say about him, no doubt, on this show, but J.K. Dobbins was the big loser in Mitchell Mania. I do not see him coming back to the Ravens after that game.
I really don't. I mean, unless Keaton Mitchell just turns out to be fool's gold and that becomes, abundantly clear by the end of the season. But based on what he's done in the preseason, based on what he was doing in practice, I just don't think that's the case. I think it's bye-bye to JK, which is a shame. He was a player a lot of us were excited about.
Yeah, it is a darn shame. Duvernay is a guy, it may just be a money thing, but they don't look like he doesn't appear to be part of their plans. Has some good returns. They're not going to pay him as a return man. Maybe, he could come back at a very low contract, but I think there's some other team that's going to say, yeah, that's our guy, 2 years, $6 million, kind of that we're willing to pay primarily as a return guy.
Yeah, I think it's a very low chance. I don't know what they're doing with Duvernay. I don't get it. They elected to pay him $4 million. They didn't have to, and I don't think they're getting $4 million worth of return from him. And I don't put that on Duvernay. I put that on the team.
I agree with that. I think he was more of an insurance policy, given they had players like Aguilar and Beckham who were not only injury risks but play risks. And Aguilar's really turned out. And been a much better player than they thought he would be, and they're having trouble getting him snaps,
right?
Or getting him targets anyway, not necessarily getting him snaps. So that's a good point. Harrison, okay, I mean, I would think he's very likely to be re-signed, but he is a free agent, and he's a perfect guy for a Ravens 2-year deal.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like we sort of mentioned before, so one of these NFL survivor type guys. I can't remember the guy's name.
Levine?
He played a lot for Ray in the 2012 Super Bowl year.
I am Badejo.
He was Well, I mean, he did play a lot on special teams, but it was
McLean,
McClellan.
McClellan, yeah.
Albert McClellan. Albert McClellan, very similar in terms of, not in terms of, build, because Malik Harrison is just this like big hulking guy, but Albert McClellan played, every position, every linebacker position, at different times. He was a very smart player, very capable player. Wasn't necessarily going to give you like, splash plays all the time or anything like that, but he was dependable, and he played a lot on special teams. And I could see Malik Harrison carving out a very similar role for himself.
Yeah, be cool to have him in town. He's definitely a fan favorite, I think, at this point with some of his play, and he really was playing some great football at the beginning of this year, and hopefully that he can finish off strong in 2023. This is a really interesting one, but what about Huntley?
As great of a story as Snoop is, I think we need to cut the cord, and I think it depends on who you get to replace him. But I think that we need more out of the passing element to our backup quarterback. I think it's always been tremendously overstated, like that it's a good thing that he runs because Lamar can run too. Your quarterback needs to be able to pass. Huntley had I think you said earlier this week that Huntley threw the best pass of his career just now to Odell Beckham, and that's nice, and it's cool that he was Pro Bowl quarterback, and I hope he gets some money elsewhere, but we need a better passer at the position, and I just hope that I hope that Tyrod Taylor becomes available, because that's who I would get. Oh,
Tyrod Taylor, that'd be a good one. Yeah. Sam Mustipher. Now, he's been a guy really underutilized by the Ravens. I think that might be a reason why he's not back, but he's been inactive some weeks, which is incredible. He started the year on the practice squad. He was a fourth-year guy. So they had the vet they did not have the vet option on him this year, I think. Yes. He had to go through waivers as a fourth-year player. So it was I'm sorry. He didn't have to go through waivers, although I thought he was a fourth-year player. That's what it was. So they handshake dealed him. So anyway, he's eligible to be a multi-year handshake deal here in Baltimore if he wants to be. Don't know if there'll be a market for his services, but he hasn't played badly at all when he's been in there.
No, and quite frankly, if he can, as I understand it, he can play some guard as well. So if he can give you anything at guard while being a capable backup center, I think then you have two very reliable, backup linemen between him and McCary, and I think that's a really great and rare thing for us to have. So I would explore that for sure.
Yeah, McCary, by the way, fantastic week. This last one, he's the first Ravens lineman to get an A+ this year in my system. So outrageously good game. Phillips is another guy now. Really emerged this year as a guy who was backup linebacker, a great player in the preseason, a real big story in camp. Don't know if he stays around or not, but another one. And we don't have to talk about every one of these guys. Yasin, a guy I think is gone for sure. Does not really seem to be happy here, and inactive this last week, which is really strange because he was ill, but he came back on Friday, so it seemed like he would be active, but Then I got a few more names. Seymour is out there. He's probably replaceable, but he's also a nice guy for special teams that the Ravens like, and they seem to like to vet in those guys. Just to go a little faster, Worley is out there. I actually think Worley is maybe a priority vet min guy.
I agree.
To keep around.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's gives you a lot in the in this split safety role opposite of Marcus Williams. So they could that could be the pair of safeties that they're rolling with next season.
Yeah, it could be, obviously, if they lose Stone. Aguilar is a guy I think is probably gone, but and maybe just looking for a greener pasture. But he's at a point in his career where, honestly, working in a system like this that really values space and whatnot, he might be a guy who stays here. He's having his best year in years,
sure,
which is good. Since I think 2020, he had a good year with the
Las Raiders. Yeah, I think so.
So then we got Beckham. I think he's probably just about a 0% chance to be back. I don't think the Ravens want him. I'm not sure that he wants to be here either.
Aaron Rodgers' season is officially over, but yours has just begun at MyBookie. NFL, college ball, and a brand new cash-out system gives you options to bet and win all season long. First 2 legs of your parlay hit, cash out early and place another bet, or let it ride for a chance at an even bigger payday. Join us at MyBookie for an entire season filled with daily odd boost, same-game parlays, and huge prize pool contests. Right now, MyBookie has a no-strings-attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. Use the promo code RAVENS on your first deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly credited to your MyBookie account. That's promo code RAVENS to claim your cash bonus now. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think he's totally gone. I don't think he's been in like a negative presence or anything. I think the most negative thing you would say about him, in my opinion, yes, aside from the extremely high price tag, and you just shake your head and you think, if they had just somehow held out. I mean, I don't remember the timing of it all, but when Arizona ended up just dropping DeAndre Hopkins. And and it just would have looked a lot better for the money that we paid. But yeah, I mean, he's sucking up too many of the targets, I think. But I think snaps, but I think we are trending in the right direction, which is something we'll cover shortly.
Okay, I want to make a comment about Beckham, because in my career as an actuary, one of the things I really love to do was get value out of interns. Interns they absolutely rock. And what's great about them is when you bring them in, you don't know exactly always what you have, but you want to expect the moon, and sometimes you get it. Was always my philosophy with bringing in interns, really sharp kids, and they always bring a new approach to things as well. They know things about how to solve problems online that may be different than your older actuaries tend to do. So they're great energizers for the organization. In a lot of ways, vet min guys bring some of that too. They're kind of like, and it's reverse in terms of aging. I know, I understand, but they're the guys who really bring some different approaches, often some veteran savvy to your organization, and teach you how to do things differently. But what's funny is, I'd offered interns to a division that is kind of paring back on their staff. So they're making cuts in the actuarial department, and you offer them interns, and the response is typically, it would be sorely inappropriate for us to be taking on interns when we're cutting so much staff, including our actuaries. It's really the wrong message to send. And I understand that, but if they re-sign Beckham even to a vet min deal, which might be worth it, and they have to let all of this talent go, and it's really because of all the dead money on Beckham's contract. There's something about that just reminds me of that problem in a major way.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's going to still make some positive contributions to the team this season, but the price tag predictably did not match the production.
All right. I'm sorry. This is taking longer than I thought, but let's jump over to the positive side, because some of these positive trends are a lot of fun. You start us off.
Yeah, I could start. I'll start with the running back group. It seems, after a good several weeks of a little bit of struggling, it seems like the running back group has finally found its core set of players and stylistic fits for this team. Even though Gus Edwards and Justice Hill have been playmakers at times in their own right, J.K. Dobbins was really going to be the dynamic player, dynamic runner of that group. Not necessarily because he has, top end speed in the league or whatever, but he had just excellent vision, excellent understanding of, how to manipulate a defender and put him on skates and just, make his jump cut. So, obviously Keaton Mitchell had his breakout game this season, and it seems like it's going to be, a really nice long career for him with plays like those. the thing that was really encouraging to me about a number of Mitchell's runs is that he wasn't bouncing to the outside. He was running between the tackles. He broke through a number of arm tackles and displayed some really great vision and explosiveness. He has really given a spark to this running group, which at times was relying on Melvin Gordon and Kenyon Drake, and it seems like that that was a lifetime ago. So looking good.
Yeah, I really loved his tackle breaking in this game. That's the thing, and I have to kind of pare back my expectations after breaking 8 tackles on 9 runs in his first game with any carries. But man, that's a breath of fresh air. And the guy he kind of reminded me of, and this is unfortunate because it didn't work out for this guy, is Justice Hill. In the 2019 start against the Steelers, he ran with all sorts of power in that game and was running people over, running right through tackles. I do think this was kind of a tired Seattle team.
Sure.
West to East travel. Mitchell didn't come in until late in the second quarter when the Ravens were already kind of dominating the game or starting to have their way with him. And then he got a lot of his, he got a lot of his big carries actually on that very first drive, but he did have, another good series of runs in the second half when they were very tired. It was Tyler Huntley's first drive in the game, and they'd already had over 60 snaps in the game. So I'm paring back my expectations some. But I want to hit on the other thing you said, which is that it's a stylistic fit. I talk about that all the time, obviously, on my show, and I really want the Ravens to have a combination of a speed guy, a cutback guy, and a power guy. And for the first time this year, and probably for the first time since J.K. was last healthy for an extended period in 2020, I feel like the Ravens have a full set. To put that together. They've been through this whole rotation of geriatric backs they brought in, who have just been too old to produce, and they've still done a little bit for the Ravens. There's a lot of these guys were well over 4 yards a carry, but all that tells you is that almost anybody would have been over 4 yards a carry in the Roman offense, and very, very positive on the running back room right now.
Definitely looking forward to the home run hitting ability.
Yeah. That the two I have are so good. I don't know which to save for last, but I'll start with the offensive line play and how much that's improved in recent weeks. Really coming on. Linderbaum playing well. He had a couple of plays as a pass blocker that were not perfect this last week. In fact, it was his worst game for pressures as I'd scored it. But in general, he had a very fine game. And he's been playing. He's continued to play well in the run. I think there's been a kind of a natural regression from that. His progression as a pass blocker has been one of the biggest single improvements in any player, all by itself. It's so important for that to be. There is a pod out there. It went out on Monday called Pass Blocking Expectation. It's Pass Block Expectation. It's with Timo Riska, who's the R&D head for PFF. It's a great formula out there. I want to plug that again and get people to listen to that. But the Tyler Linderbaum information in there is particularly good. So the offensive line play in general, I'm still a little bit worried about Ronnie Stanley, but he's one of the players I'm looking at and saying stylistically, qualitatively, not stylistically, qualitatively, he's had better games the last few weeks. He did give up the sack to Mafe, but it actually was his best game of the season, even that considered, and that was his only negative play. He had a couple other plays where he was going to allow a pressure, maybe even a sack again to Mafe, and Lamar ran him out of trouble. Those hit his adjustment very hard this week, so he didn't get the adjustment he would have done, or he would have been even a higher score. But I really have liked seeing Ronnie look improved against a quality opponent this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. It's nice to see. So first of all, yes, Linderbaum has just been, improved significantly. Both guards had their problems earlier in the season, have stacked a number of good games back to back, which is really what you want to see, particularly in Zeitler's case, where you were just wondering, is this a health thing? Is this an age thing? What's going on? Seems to be back, rounding out to, the form that you would expect. Ronnie just looks healthier every week. He's not necessarily at the level that maybe even that he was at last year, But he's looking better and more confident, and he was anchoring better in some instances than I'd seen in recent weeks. So he's looking very good, and of course, McCary filled in very admirably for Morgan Moses on the right side, and I think I saw that Moses returned to practice today, so should be looking good. They're playing well, and I think that Lamar's confidence in throwing is reflective of that.
Yeah, 13 out of 26 ATS opportunities this last week. Now, there was a lot of four-man rush from Seattle, but that was the highest rate of the season, and really good to see a game like that tossed out there. I'm just very excited about the OL play.
Yes, stiff test for them this week, but hopefully they'll be up for it. All right, so my final positive is the sort of latest development. I guess maybe the sample size is too small for to necessarily call it a trend, but Bateman and Likely's reemergence in the offense. Now Bateman, this has gone back a couple games, and it's highlighted by his catch in the Arizona game, I believe, where he basically went back and kind of became like, he stole back what would have been a sure interception, and has been looking just better and better. Bateman has looked good for a good part of the season. I would say most of the season when he's been healthy, other than the Steelers game where he had a couple crucial drops, he's been looking good. He's been running great routes. He just hasn't necessarily been getting the targets. But over the last 2 to 3 games, he's really been rewarding Lamar pretty much every time that the ball is thrown his way. He's been making some incredible catches. He's been fighting for the ball, and he's been getting yards after the catch. Go ahead.
So he had 2 incomplete passes in thrown his way in this last one, and both of them were overthrows on deep balls. So I've got a couple things to say about that. First of all, great that they're taking some deep shots. Yeah. Fantastic. I just would like to see those be more trust balls that are not made to overthrow Bateman or nothing else kind of thing, but thrown up with enough air under it that Bateman can go run to the spot, get to it, particularly when the defender has his back to the quarterback as the ball is thrown. That's an opportunity in man coverage to have really good things happening in that spot. And it seemed like in both cases, the corner was chasing to try and keep up with Bateman. Had half a step maybe in each case. It was unfortunate that in both those cases those balls were overthrown, because it would have been a nice opportunity in the case and a great chance for additional trust, which is really the big thing for both these players. Likely 4 targets, caught them all. In fact, you go back this whole season, Likely's only had 1 ball thrown his way that he hasn't caught, and that was that horrible drop against the Colts, which is one of 10 plays maybe in that game that cost him the game.
Yep.
So it's, both those guys, to have them earn more trust is great. I think we're at a point, honestly, where Beckham probably needs to take a few less snaps. Bateman needs to take more snaps. They did a very good job, by the way, of balancing snaps for the receivers for everybody except for Duvernay. So, that's how I would cut it. I would take about 20% of Beckham snaps away at this point and give them to Bateman if I wanted to, even more, keep the group fresh and keep the group as talented as possible.
Yeah, and I mean that's also, I think, a good thing for Beckham too, right? Because he has ability, he has veteran savvy, but you need that later on in the season, right? He needs to stay healthy, and the way that you do that is lowering your snap count a little bit. First 3 weeks of the season, Isaiah Likely had 4 targets, caught 3 of them. Last week he had 1 target, which he caught. 2 weeks ago against Arizona, he had 1 target, which he caught. And then this past week, he caught all 4 of his targets. He nearly doubled his targets and receptions for the season. Actually, he did double his receptions for the season. And it's just great that he got involved in. I really love a game where you see backups who haven't seen the field in forever for a positive reason, right? Mm-hmm. Not because anybody's injured, but like, at some point, you're playing so well that you're okay with trotting Faalele out there. Okay, well then we're in a really good spot. Mm-hmm. And so, I hope that this is an indicator that that there's going to be a conscious effort to get more players involved, because quite frankly, if Isaiah Likely's out there on a play and he never gets targeted, then, the Ravens have basically, defended the pass to Likely, by themselves, by telegraphing to the, defense that, there's no way we're going to throw past that guy. And that's not smart.
Yeah. The only guy that I'm a little conservative about Duvernay and reintegrating him into the offense. It's nice to see him get 2 catches as well. But Charlie Kolar is now the new guy that they need to find out what they have.
Yeah.
And, he had a big drop early in the season. It's still his only target. It was in week 1 when Andrews was out. So frustrating that I'm sure he's very frustrated in terms of not getting back in the game as a receiver. He's at least getting a few snaps as a blocker, but he's almost exclusively that. And it's almost been like a tell. Part of it is that, he's coming into games late when the Ravens have it won and they're just running the ball down the opponent's throat, and he's in there as a run blocker. But he's run very few patterns, in fact, the last few weeks. And it would be nice to see him, get back into the offense with a catch at least and have some opportunity to gain some trust.
It's just a smart season-long strategy, too. I mean, we've talked about this, right? Like if you're, at the very least, if you're in a position where you've got the game in hand, it's the second half of the, fourth quarter, and you've got some clock to kill, start integrating those guys. Mark Andrews does not need to be out there at that point, right? Mm-hmm. Bateman and Zay Flowers, they don't need to be out there at that point. You need those guys for the situations January. Where it's exactly. But the guys who you may end up having to rely on in January, could be some of these backups, could be Kolar, could be Likely. I mean, let's hope that we're not, counting on those guys, because that means that, something's happened to Mark Andrews. But the reality of this is that this is a physical league. Injuries happen, and you don't want the first time you're throwing a pass to the guy to be, in that situation. I mean, I don't think David Tyree got many passes, before he made the helmet catch. But that happens only ever so often. So I wouldn't want to, place all the chips on that bet.
It's a good one. It's certainly a good one. I'll move on. I'll say the last thing I've got is the defensive scheme has continued to trend in the right direction. Here's how I see it. The Ravens have not really changed their defensive scheme much the entire season in terms of what they want to present to the opponent. It's basically all base or nickel. They don't have any variations on the nickel really because they don't have the outside linebackers to bump inside. They don't have enough warm bodies right now to really do it. They have a great 3-man rotation at the top of the outside linebacker group. They're trying to keep them fresh. And a couple of those guys are olders. Makes all kinds of sense in terms of how they used them. I don't think they're at a point where they should really use 3. They could acquire another and maybe do it. But again, we've also talked about, Sue maybe being another guy. But they haven't really changed the type of nickel they play other than the big nickel, standard nickel of where you use Hamilton, which is really a switch on, switch off choice I think they will eventually make when they have the safeties healthy, and certainly when they have 4 safeties healthy. I think Hamilton moves back to the slot. I don't think there's a question about it. Maulet's play is kind of confirming that with the last couple of weeks, in particular the big reception given up this week to Smith and Jigba down the right sideline.
Yeah, I mean, it's been just amazing to see how basically almost like substitution proof the defense has been. Whoever's been called up to bat, they've excelled. Particularly, I think it's nowhere is it highlighted more than in the cornerback room. Obviously some things had to happen. Brandon Stevens emerging as a legitimate starting corner in this league, is definitely a fantastic thing. But you can't forget that Marlon Humphrey has only been back a couple weeks. For a long time, it was, a bunch of guys who we really didn't know we were going to get, Brandon Stevens included. We were all thinking Rocky Sin was going to be, the guy, but really it's been, plug and play. And also along the defensive line, I mean, it's particularly with the, edge rushers, have just come in and played extremely, extremely well. So it's just I think it's a real credit to not only the scheme, but recognizing which players they can pick up, because they've picked up a lot of these guys in season.
Yep.
Which players are going to be able to contribute within the confines of the scheme. And they've played so well within the scheme. Largely in part, I think, to the excellent middle linebacker play and the safety play.
Yeah. I completely agree. And the Pierce-Matabike tandem has been very, very special for this team. And they're playing basically now all the same snaps. So they played the same exact 27 snaps against the Seahawks, for example. But they've really been playing a huge overlapping number of snaps. And I wouldn't have guessed that at the beginning of the season. I would have said Pierce is an early down snap eater, and Matabike I want to save for obvious passing downs. But they've been so complementary as pass rushers. That's really worked out. And I'll give you the last element of this trend that I think is really good is that they faced a kind of a generally increasing difficulty of opponents as the season is worn on. And this defense has continued to hold up to all that. In fact, in some ways it's improved. It's, they two of the most dominating games of all time against the Lions and the Seahawks were both against good teams. They went into Cleveland and kicked the snot out of the Browns, which obviously, they had quarterback issues at that problem, but they also pretty much kicked the snot out of them on offense too. It's what they've done to good teams reminds me a lot of 2019. And I know I'm saying that a little bit early, but in 2019, it really didn't matter who they played after week 4. They beat them very handily. That included the San Francisco game and going out to Seattle, playing a really tough game and taking care of business very handily. The play against good opponents was extraordinary that year.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how they handle a healthier Joe Burrow and more to the point that Miami offense, which is not looking as as imposing as it did a few weeks ago. Kansas City did a pretty good job shutting them down defensively, and Kansas City, I think, easily has the best defense that they've ever had in the Mahomes era for sure. But I don't think anybody's saying anybody views Kansas City's defense as one of the premier defenses in the league. I mean, I think the Browns and the Ravens come to mind, and for my money, it's the Ravens. But I think it's really important before you get to the playoffs for you to have really been tested. And even if those games don't all go your way, you don't come away with a win, but you do come away with experience. And if you take that and apply that into the playoffs, good things will happen.
Yeah, great stuff. I one more question I have about the defense is about the pass rush, and that I'll just ask when do you get to the point where you just go along with the scheme is so good and the sum of the parts has been so good that we can kind of believe in the pass rush rates they've had so far this year, which have been accomplished under incredible circumstances. I mean, it's mostly 4-man rush. They almost never have rushed 6 the entire year. Been a handful of times only. Yeah. At one point, do we say, you know what, I'm buying into this? This really is how good the pass rush is.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely just a really remarkable accomplishment, and McDonald really seems to have a knack for knowing exactly when to send that extra guy, send Hamilton or whoever it is, and the results have just been really fantastic. He I think has a really good feel for when the quarterback is going to see it coming, and it's just an unselfish, really, really disciplined complement of players who, they're playing for the team sack. And they're getting home. What can you say?
Yeah. It's just unbelievable to see. And they've still only 26 times they've rushed with 6 or 7 this year, which actually surprised me a little bit higher than I thought it was. But still 26 in 9 games now is only 3 per game. So pretty remarkable. And definitely we saw a lot more 6-man rush with Wink and with Rex Ryan in the past. So just the results are incredible. When they've had a great pass rush, they've generally done it with numbers, at least in part. So, Slava, always a pleasure doing this show with you. Tell folks where they can talk football with you.
You can find me on Twitter at Slava Cooperstein. That's SLAVAKUPERSTEIN.
All right, outstanding. Other folks out there who want to do a film study short, hit me up on Twitter. DMs are always open. I'd love to hear from you. This is how I meet new people, find new friends to talk football with. And we'll take your small idea, hopefully, when I say small, a siloed idea, let's call it, an idea that does not expand over all elements of the team to changes you'd like to see, for example. And we'll talk about how that might make a great show. I'll get back to you very quickly. For Slava Cooperstein, this is Ken McCusick saying goodbye, and we'll talk to you next week on One Last Thing.